Welcome back to the deep dive. I want you to just close your eyes for a second.
As long as you're not driving, of course.
Right, yeah. Please keep your eyes open if you're behind the wheel. But if you can, I want you to picture the American Midwest. And I don't mean the way it looks today.
No strip malls or interstate highways.
Exactly. I want you to picture the bedrock of it. We were looking at Ohio today, specifically these towns of Bonomi and Doyle.
Which are heavily based on historical reality, even if the names are fictionalized in our source material.
Right. In the book Buckeye by Patrick Ryan. And usually, when we talk about history, we look at maps, we look at borders changing. But this source material asks us to look lower. It actually asks us to start with the geology.
Which is such a fascinating, if maybe a little ominous, place to start a historical discussion.
Yeah, why ominous?
Well, because these towns aren't just sitting on dirt. They are built on top of glaciers, or I guess the landscape that the glaciers left behind. It's limestone and compressed steel.
It's a landscape carved out by ice and time.
Right, it's heavy, and that geological pressure is just the perfect metaphor for what we're unpacking today.
Because our mission for this deep dive isn't to look at the explosion, so to speak. We aren't looking at the front lines of World War II.
No generals, no troop movements.
We aren't storming the beaches of Normandy. We are looking at the compression, the pressure cooker of the home front.
We're looking at the people who are left behind. The war of the invisible people, really.
Yeah, and we have these three specific subjects to guide us. First is Cal Jenkins. He's a young man in Bonomi whose biology basically betrays his patriotism.
He's desperate to serve, but completely rejected by history.
And then we have his wife, Becky, who discovers she has this very mysterious ability to communicate with the dead. And she discovers this right at the moment when the world starts producing casualties on a mass scale.
Which is definitely not a coincidence.
No, not at all. And then finally we have Margaret Salt. She's an orphan from a completely different corner of Ohio over in Doyle. And she's basically inventing a brand new life for herself in the big city of Columbus.
Her story really parallels Cal and Becky's in this intense way because, they all hiding something.
Right, they're all curating reality.
That's the thread that ties this whole thing together. When the world falls apart, how do you glue your own identity back together?
You use a hammer? Do you use a lie? Do you use a seance? Or a combination of all three?
Exactly. So, okay, let's unpack this. Because what looks like a very quiet, quaint life in Ohio is actually a pressure cooker. We have a marriage straining under the weight of ghosts.
Literal and metaphorical ghosts.
We have a father hoarding trash to ward off trauma. And we have a kidnapping.
An actual orchestrated kidnapping.
Yeah, a kidnapping orchestrated to save a relationship. So let's just dive right into Cal Jenkins, because his story immediately challenges that mythos of the greatest generation where every man was a hero.
Right. The statues and the parades don't really leave room for guys like Cal.
No, they don't. Cal was born in 1920, and right from the jump, he has this physical deficit.
It's a congenital condition. One of his legs is 2 inches shorter than the other. 2 inches is a lot when you're trying to walk.
It is. And, if this were today, he'd get custom orthotics. Maybe even a corrective surgery.
It would just be a footnote in his medical file.
Exactly. But in the 1920s and 30s, this defines his entire existence. It's this incredibly visible marker of difference.
He can't run track. He can't balance on a bike easily. But what really struck me in the source material is how his father tries to fix it.
Oh, Everett.
Yeah, Everett Jenkins.
Yeah.
He isn't a doctor. He's an amateur carpenter. He's a junk collector. So he looks at his son's leg, and he doesn't see a medical issue. He sees a leveling problem.
Like a wobbly table.
Exactly. So he improvises, and the solution is just so visceral. Everett takes an old tire, thick, heavy industrial rubber, and he carves out this massive sole.
And he just nails it right onto the bottom of Cal's shoe.
Which is wild. Picture that. You're a kid in elementary school. You just want to fit in, right? You want to be invisible.
But instead, you're clumping down the hallway.
Clump, squeak, clump. You've got a literal piece of a Goodyear tire nailed to your foot.
It's basically social suicide. You're branding your kid as the other. But what's really fascinating is how Pal internalizes that branding.
He starts to believe there's a cosmic reason for it.
Right. And he's fed this idea by his childhood friend, Sean Robeson.
Oh, man. Sean Robeson. This part is just tragic. So Sean has his own physical quirk. He has these incredibly tight hamstrings. He can't even touch his toes.
And Sean tells Cal, he says, "We are unique in God's eyes. were each meant for a special thing.
It's a coping mechanism. These two outcast kids convincing themselves that their limitations are actually prophecies.
Like they're being saved for something better. But history is a really cruel sense of irony.
Because Pearl Harbor happens.
The War Department steps in, and suddenly that special thing gets quantified by a draft board.
And the twist here is just brutal. Sean Robeson, the kid with the tight hamstrings, the Army decides he is fit enough.
Turns out hamstrings don't matter much when they just need bodies for the front line.
Right. He gets drafted, he goes to Tunisia, then Sicily, and he eventually dies in the Hurtgen forest.
And
Cal is marked 4F, unfit for service.
Which is such a heavy label. We hear 4F in movies a lot, usually as a minor plot point.
Yeah, like the skinny kid in a superhero movie before he gets the serum.
Exactly. But based on this account, 4F was a psychological branding iron. It was pure emasculation.
Because you have to think about the visual language of 1942.
Right. If you were a man between 18 and 35 and you were not in uniform, you were highly visible. You were a glitch.
People looked at you and they didn't see a person. They saw a question mark. Like, why aren't you over there? Are you a coward?
Are you defective? And Cal feels this so deeply. There's this unbelievable anecdote from the source material about Cal visiting the recruitment center in early 1942.
He goes in fully expecting to be rejected, right? He knows his leg is messed up. He knows he's wearing a tire on his foot.
But he just has to try. It's pure desperation to belong to his generation. So he stands there, he strips down, the doctor looks at his leg, and the doctor doesn't just say no.
He offers him a consolation prize.
Which is somehow so much worse.
An armband. The doctor offers him an armband for the Citizens Defense Corps.
It's devastating. It's the state officially looking at you and saying, you are not a warrior. You are a spectator. Here's a little fabric band to prove you're trying.
Cal is utterly humiliated. The text notes that he actually contemplates growing a beard or moving to a different town entirely, like Toledo or Cleveland.
Just so he can lie to strangers.
Yeah. He wants to create this whole backstory where he's a wounded veteran who got sent home early.
And he feels loathsome for having those thoughts, but he just can't stop. So while millions of guys are shipping out, Cal stays in Ohio. He works at a concrete plant. Later, he gets a job at a local hardware store.
And in his spare time, he's reading these cheesy adventure novels, like The Bold Buccaneer.
It's the agony of the bystander. He's retreating into fantasy because mixing cement while your friends are dying in Europe is just too shameful for him to process.
But to really understand Cal's mindset, we have to talk about his dad, Everett.
Because Cal didn't just inherit a short leg. He inherited a worldview.
Yeah, Everett Jenkins is a whole character study on his own. He is a World War I veteran. He won a Purple Heart. But unlike the heroes in the newsreels, Everett absolutely refuses to talk about the war.
Complete avoidance, which we would recognize today as PTSD. But Everett's trauma manifests in a very spatial, physical way.
He hoards.
Leslie.
The description of his house is wild. He lives in this farmhouse packed with what he calls institutional and governmental clutches.
It's trash. He scavenges from dumpsters.
But for him, it's a way to control the chaos, right?
Exactly. The world is out of control. The government sends kids to die in trenches, so Everett saves string. He saves buttons, tin cans. The Login of Trauma says that if you keep everything, you never lose anything.
He has 5 Model T cars parked in his yard. 5. And he turned one of them into a chicken coop.
That image is so powerful. The Model T is the ultimate symbol of American industrial pride, the machine that put the world on wheels.
And Everett is letting chickens poop in it.
Right. It's a complete rejection of progress. He's essentially saying, this machine didn't save us from the horror I saw, so now it's a shed.
He also shoots and eats squirrels. And he writes these furious letters to FDR.
Accusing Roosevelt of manufacturing the war. So he's paranoid, sure, but he's also a guy who survived the meat grinder of the First World War. He tells Cal that the people doing the talking are never the ones doing the dying.
Which creates such a weird dynamic between them.
Yeah.
Cal brings him groceries because Everett won't take care of himself. And how does Everett say thank you? He throws snowballs at his son.
It's a relationship built entirely on shared trauma and silence. Everett is the ghost of the last war, and he's haunting Cal, who just wants to get into the current war.
There are 2 sides of this masculine crisis, and that crisis creates a power vacuum in Cal's own home. Which brings us to Becky.
Right. While Cal is shrinking, his wife Becky is expanding.
Becky starts out as a pretty standard mid-century housewife. But the war unlocks something in her.
Or rather, the war creates a massive market for what she already has.
Yes. Becky becomes what she calls a spirit liaison.
I love that title, Spirit Liaison. She doesn't call herself a medium or a fortune teller.
It sounds like a bureaucratic title, like someone who works at a desk in the War Department.
Exactly. It lends this air of official gravity to what she's doing.
Now you have to wonder, does the source material frame her as having actual supernatural powers? Or is she running a scam?
It's treated with a very careful ambiguity, but it definitely starts with real intuition. There's this backstory from her childhood where she located a missing neighbor, a Mr. Shefflin.
Right. The police were totally stumped. They couldn't find him anywhere.
But young Becky hears his voice in her head, and the voice just says, "I'm not far away."
That is so eerie. I'm not far away.
And sure enough, they find him in his car, submerged in a local river.
So that establishes early on that she's not just making things up for attention. She has some kind of radar.
But she suppresses it for years. She's normal. She reads Agatha Christie mysteries. She meets Cal at a lunch counter while he's drinking a root beer float.
Which is the most wholesome American image ever.
Very Norman Rockwell. They get married in 1942. They have a son named Skip,
who Cal says looks like a young James Cagney. He calls him a keeper.
It's a sweet, quiet, domestic setup until the war really gets going. And this is the crucial context for Becky's rise. The war created an unprecedented market for grief.
Let's really dig into that. Why does spiritualism always spike during wartime?
Well, think about the communication limits of the 1940s. You're a mother or a wife, and you get a telegram from the War Department, missing in action.
What does that even mean?
Exactly. It's not a period at the end of a sentence. It's an agonizing blank space. Is he a prisoner of war? Is he dead? Is he injured somewhere? The government couldn't give answers, and the local churches were just offering platitudes about God's will.
People needed specifics.
Yeah.
They were desperate for any kind of closure. So Becky starts holding what she calls sessions.
And she is very firm that they are not seances. She hates that word.
Why? What's the difference to her?
Seances imply Victorian parlor tricks. You know, table tipping, fake ectoplasm, floating trumpets, theatrical nonsense.
Right. Becky doesn't do any of that.
No, her sessions are modern, stripped down. She just sits in a spare room, concentrates deeply, and acts almost like a radio receiver tuning into a frequency.
And her clientele is just heartbreaking. You have Mrs. Dodson, a neighbor who lost both her husband and her son.
Yeah, Mr. Timmons, who runs the local ceramic shop. These aren't fringe weirdos. They are regular, grieving townspeople.
And refugees too, right?
Yes. European refugees who settled in Ohio, desperately trying to find out what happened to relatives left behind in the camps or the bombings. Becky becomes the vessel for the town's collective sorrow.
She's doing the emotional labor that the state simply cannot do. But then it shifts. She starts treating it like a business. She puts an ad in the Hancock Gazette.
Spirit liaison.
And this is where the tension with Cal just boils over. Cal is furious.
Well, he's a skeptic, first of all. He doesn't believe in ghosts or spirits. But more than that, he's deeply threatened.
He tells her he's worried about having strangers in the house. He has all these anxieties about someone kidnapping little Skip.
But if we read between the lines, it's about his own emasculation. Look at the balance of power in that house. Cal is working at the hardware store trying to sell toasters.
Except he can't even sell toasters because there's a metal shortage due to rationing.
Exactly. He's totally useless in his own eyes. Meanwhile, his wife is providing profound, essential emotional closure to the entire community.
She is becoming locally famous.
Yeah.
It's a complete gender role reversal for the 1940s.
He's the anxious one staying home, worrying about the baby, and she has this vital public vocation.
And then the media catches wind of it. There's a magazine called The Seance Precede that does a profile on her.
The headline is Comfort in a Time of War.
Which sounds lovely, but that article attracts Casey LaGrange.
Enter the antagonist.
Casey LaGrange. I mean, even the name sounds like a guy selling snake oil.
Yeah.
He shows up in Bonomi, all the way from Fort Wayne. He claims he's a researcher.
But he's a charlatan. He's a predator, really. He spots Becky's local success and sees a gold mine.
So he starts hovering around, flattering her, sitting in on her sessions. And he's not there to study grief. He's there for show business.
Right. He pitches her this idea. He wants her to join a traveling show he's putting together called American Mystics.
He wants to take her quiet, deeply personal grief counseling and turn it into a vaudeville act on the road.
And he crosses a physical line, too. There's a scene where they're sitting on the glider in the backyard, and he touches her knee.
Which is just classic boundary testing, predatory behavior.
Becky handles it politely because she's trying to be a professional.
Yeah.
But Cal is absolutely seething.
Which leads us to arguably the most unhinged part of this entire deep dive. the kidnapping.
It is so jarring. You feel like you're reading a domestic drama and suddenly you're dropped into a noir gangster film.
So Cal's father-in-law gets involved. Becky's dad, Roman Hanover. We need to talk about Roman.
Roman is wealthy, pragmatic, and intensely controlling.
He bought Cal and Becky their house. He actually employs Cal.
And the source material gives him this perfect symbolic hobby. He has this massive, intricate train set in his basement.
He loves controlling the little people and the schedules.
Exactly. So he looks at Cal's passivity with Lagrange, and Roman views it as a mechanical error that he needs to fix.
He decides Cal needs to learn how to bite. So Roman recruits him for a mission.
It's 7:30 in the morning. They park outside the Whitman Hotel where Lagrange is staying.
They ambush him. It is a straight-up ambush. They force this guy into Roman's Cadillac.
And this detail is what makes it so intense. Roman hands Cal a weapon, but it's not a gun.
It's a hammer.
A literal hammer. It's blunt force. And it's so fitting because Cal's a hardware store clerk. That's his tool.
Roman tells Cal to hold the hammer against Lagrange,
Yeah.
and they drive him to the train station.
They forcibly march him onto the 8.22 train to Toledo, and the threat is crystal clear. Never come back to Bonomi, never write to Becky again.
It is vigilante justice. But think about who's doing it. A hardware clerk and a guy who plays with model trains.
They aren't the mafia. They're just two Midwestern men trying to reassert their dominance in a world where they feel totally useless.
Roman is playing general, and he drafts his 4F son-in-law to be his foot soldier.
And the tragic part is, Cal feels great about it at first. He expects to walk through his front door to a hero's welcome.
He really thinks, I slayed the dragon. I protected my castle.
Which is a massive, catastrophic miscalculation.
Because Becky is furious.
As she should be. And it all comes down to agency.
Right. Becky didn't like Lagrange. She knew he was a creep who was trying to exploit her. But she wanted to handle it herself.
By kidnapping the guy and threatening him with a hammer, Cal and Roman completely stripped her of her voice.
They treated her like a possession that needed guarding, not an adult running a business.
They didn't save her, they overruled her.
And the fallout from that morning at the train station is icy. It breaks the marriage. They stay in the same house, but they sleep in separate rooms.
They become basically just roommates who are co-parenting Skip.
It perfectly captures the tension of the home front era. You have these men desperately trying to cling to the traditional protector role, right, as women are stepping into unprecedented independence.
We always talk about Rosie the Riveter in the factories, but Becky is asserting a different kind of power. Spiritual and emotional authority.
And Cal just couldn't handle it. He tried to solve a complex emotional shift with a hammer.
It's deeply sad. But while this incredibly tense Cold War is happening in Bonomi, we have a parallel life playing out over in Columbus.
Yes. Let's shift gears and talk about Margaret Salt. Because if Becky's story is all about revealing secrets and talking to the dead, Margaret's story is about burying her past completely.
Margaret is the perfect counterweight to Cal and Becky. She starts her life with absolute zero. She's an orphan, literally abandoned in a basket at the Open Arms Orphanage in Doyle.
She's raised by the administrator there, a woman named Lydia Wirtz. And Margaret's childhood is just brutal.
The foster system back then was a lottery, and she pulled a terrible ticket. She gets placed in the Selby home,
which is basically a house of horrors. The neglect and abuse she suffers there is awful. But there's this one detail she fixates on.
The mistletoe.
Yeah. The Selbys leave a sprig of mistletoe hanging in their doorway all year round. It gets all dry and dusty. And Margaret describes it as hanging there, quote, like a bat.
Which completely subverts what mistletoe is supposed to mean. It's supposed to be this charming symbol of romance and affection.
But in the Selby house, it's this ominous dead thing, a symbol of distorted, absent love.
So she learns very early on that if she's going to survive, she has to rely entirely on herself, and the moment she turns 18, she gets out. She moves to Columbus to completely reinvent herself.
And for someone from a tiny town like Doyle in the 1930s, Columbus is the future. It's modernity. And the epicenter of that for Margaret is the Lazarus department store.
It's her temple.
The way it's described in the source material, it sounds magical. They have neon signs, these huge mirrored panels everywhere.
There's an actual rowboat sitting right in the middle of the sporting goods section.
Which must have blown her mind. But for Margaret, Lazarus isn't just a place to shop. It's an academy.
She wanders the aisles, studying how to be a classy woman. She watches the wealthy shoppers. She memorizes how they hold their purses, how they speak to the clerks.
She is intensely studying for a role she plans to play, But her education in Columbus also involves some darker, more pragmatic lessons.
We have to talk about how she uses intimacy as a tool for survival.
It's uncomfortable, but it's central to who she is. She has this boss at the cafeteria where she works, Mr. Higgs.
And he essentially coerces her. It's a completely transactional dynamic. She desperately needs the job, and he leverages his power over her.
But Margaret doesn't break down. She flips the transaction. She takes his money.
She uses his money to buy new clothes at Lazarus. She's literally funding her disguise, her upward mobility with this awful situation.
And later she meets a guy named Bernard. He's a deed researcher. And Bernard actually teaches her that sex doesn't just have to be a grim transaction. It can be fun.
Right. There's that moment where Bernard is so overwhelmed, he just stammers, Jack.
It's a sexual awakening for her, but it's still just a stepping stone.
Yeah.
Because her ultimate endgame is Felix Salt.
Felix Salt is the jackpot for the character Margaret is playing. He's an aluminum executive. He's handsome. He is the absolute model of propriety.
They meet while bowling, of all things.
Yeah.
And they end up eloping. But Felix, behind closed doors, is, well,
he is incredibly repressed.
to the point of absurdity.
He's sexually awkward in a way that would be funny if it wasn't so stifling. He actually has a catchphrase he uses in bed.
Oh, this killed me. He says, "Let's elbow in."
Let's elbow in. It's a leftover phrase from his college football huddles.
It's the least romantic, most sterile thing you could possibly say to your wife.
But Margaret just manages it. She coaches him through intimacy. She makes the marriage function because she needs the stability it provides.
But the entire foundation of their life is a fabrication. She hides her time at Open Arms. She completely invents a fake family history.
Because her biggest fear is that Felix, or anyone in his social circle, will look at her and see a charity case.
Which connects her story directly back to Cal and Becky in Bonhomie.
Yes, everyone we're looking at today is frantically curating a version of reality just to survive the psychological pressure of the era.
Cal is terrified of being seen as weak, so he kidnaps a man with a hammer.
Becky feels invisible, so she channels the dead to become essential.
And Margaret wants to erase her trauma, so she plays the role of the flawless mid-century housewife with a fictional past.
They're all hiding the gritty, desperate realities of their lives behind these carefully constructed facades.
Which is really the defining characteristic of the home front in this deep dive. It's all about maintaining appearances while the globe is literally on fire.
But as we push into 1945, these facades start to crack. The war is finally winding down.
Right, and normally we think of the end of World War II as this euphoric release, the famous VE Day photos, sailors kissing nurses in Times Square.
The ticker tape parades.
But for the people in our source material, the end of the war is much more complicated.
Particularly for Cal Jenkins.
Yeah. We hit April 1945. FDR dies.
The father figure of the American century is suddenly gone. The man who defined the entire era for these people.
The town of Bonhomie is absolutely stunned. But for Cal, the grief is mixed with this terrible, tragic realization.
Because Hitler's suicide follows soon after. VE Day is on the horizon, and Cal realizes that his window has closed forever.
Time just slipped right past him.
The defining event of his entire generation, the crucible that turned boys into respected men in the eyes of his peers, it's over, and he missed it.
He's never going to be a veteran. He's never going to sit at the VFW hall and swap war stories.
Instead, he's left selling toasters in a hardware store and living in a silent, freezing Cold War with his own wife.
It's a profound grief. He isn't mourning a person. He's mourning a potential version of himself that he never got to be.
Which leads to this incredibly poignant final scene in the material. Becky decides to hold a massive group session, a group seance, essentially to try and contact FDR.
Because everyone is desperate to hear from the ultimate authority figure one last time.
It's the biggest event she's ever hosted.
And what is Cal doing during this? He's carrying the chairs.
He's physically hauling the furniture for her guests, but he is entirely excluded from the spiritual event itself.
He's just the hired muscle in his own home.
Mm-hmm.
And he has this moment where he wonders if he's just going to sprout gray hair while still being mad at his wife.
It's such a bleak vision of his future, a stagnant life. The global war is over, but his personal feelings of inadequacy are just going to drag on into old age.
He's still just a little boy with a tire rubber nailed to his shoe watching all the other kids run past him.
It really makes you rethink that Greatest Generation label, doesn't it?
It completely dismantles it. We always look back at that era and assume there was this universal unity and moral clarity, everyone pitching in together.
But the sources show us this incredibly messy, fractured reality. It was an era defined by deep insecurities, by massive secrets kept hidden inside marriages, and by people just frantically trying to survive their own perceived failures.
So, as we wrap up this deep dive, here's a question I want you to mull over on your own. Put yourself in Cal's uneven shoes for a second. If you felt that useless, would you have accepted the role Roman offered you? Would you have picked up that hammer to play the hero?
Or would you have found the strength to actually support Becky's newfound independence, even if it made you feel smaller?
And think about Becky, too. Is her spiritualism genuinely a gift to a grieving town? Or is it just another coping mechanism, no different than Everett Jenkins building a wall of trash in his yard?
It's all about how we protect ourselves from the things we can't control.
Exactly. Because history isn't just a list of dates and battles. It's the smell of a tire rubber shoe in a school hallway. It's the sound of a neighbor crying in a parlor. And it's the lies we tell each other just to maintain propriety.
Well said.
Thanks. Until the next deep dive, keep asking what's beneath the surface.
Stay curious.
Thanks for listening.